Welcome to the session on the Metadata Server, or VMGS as it is alternatively called. VMGS stands for Video Metadata Generation Server and is part of the suite of services provided by Cisco's Video Surveillance Manager software. This session assumes that you have already worked with the basic suite of VSM services, which are VSMS, VSOM, and SASD. The Metadata Server is a new server introduced with the VSM 7.5 release. The purpose of this server is to provide metadata services, as is obvious from the name. This service runs on a dedicated standalone server. By dedicated, what we mean to say is that it cannot be co-resident with a VSMS or a VSOM server. It has to be a server by itself. The first metadata service available through this server is the ability to look for luminance changes, or in other words, to perform after the fact motion detection. So how does it do it? The metadata server analyzes previously recorded video archives and produces metadata, which is then viewable through the SASD client. Think of it as an advanced version of the existing forensic search feature. In forensic search, we were able to drill down to the relevant recorded video by using time as the parameter for search. Now, using this metadata search feature, we drilled down to the relevant recorded video using motion as the parameter. So the real value addition here is, even if you did not have motion detection set up on the camera, you can do motion detection analysis after the fact, as long as you have the recording available. Now let's talk about how the metadata server is set up and configured. The first thing we do is install the metadata server on a standalone Red Hat 6.4-bit server, which has a 64-bit operating system, and complete the initial setup of the server using the VSMC wizard, similar to the way you would set up a media server. But instead of enabling the media server, you would enable only the metadata server. So you would go through by setting your network settings, which you are seeing on the screen right here. You would set your date and time preferences, your language settings, and restart services. Once you set up all these parameters, you would come back to this console. You would see that the metadata service is activated on the server and nothing else. So media server and metadata server cannot be co-resident. So if you have metadata service running, it has to be running on its own. Now that the metadata server is running, we go to VSOM, go to go to system settings, go to servers, and you would add your metadata server from here. Keep in mind that you can add only one metadata server per VSOM, and I've already added it. So if I didn't already add it, all I would do is click on add over here, enter the hostname or the IP address of the metadata server, enter the credentials of the server, choose my service type as metadata server, and choose the correct installation location and hit add. But I've already added it, so you can see it here. Once it's added, it'll just show up in the list of servers over here with all the relevant information. Now that the server is added into VSOM, we need to go and set up the recording analysis settings. Now, that is done in the templates. So I would go to cameras, templates, and in my templates, I have a template which is set up already. So I will show you that template. I would choose the streaming, recording, and events tab. And we have a new tab inside here called analytics settings. So we click on analytics settings and choose luminance as the metadata track which I would like to analyze. So if I did not already have it set up, this is how it would look. All I would do is hit the plus button associated with luminance, and that would add that to the metadata tracks to be analyzed for all the cameras associated with this template. You can set up the retention time here for the metadata. So this can be less than the archive retention time, but it cannot be more than the archive retention time. So depending on your needs, you can set up the appropriate retention time. Now that we have this set up here, all the cameras associated with this template can have the metadata be generated by the metadata server. Now let's look at how that is done. For generating and viewing the metadata, we would use the VSM 7.5 SASD client. This feature is not available through the VSOM web client, so we have to use SASD for now. The forensic analysis tab, which is new with 7.5, is on your screen right here. As we open the SASD, this is the screen you would see. In forensic analysis, we have an option to select motion analysis, and I would want to do motion video search, so that's the option I am choosing here. So as I click this, a new window pops up and allows me to select a camera. So I would select a camera by dragging and dropping from SASD. I have a camera which is associated with the template we previously set up for motion analysis. I drop that camera in here, and this is the very busy screen which allows you to generate and also view the metadata. So a very busy screen here, but on the top you see the camera details, the name of the camera, the stream on which we are doing the processing. Then we have a couple of seek bars. So the top seek bar is showing the full range of the recording available. So it's available for a full day from 6 p.m. on 3/19 to 6 p.m. on 3/20. We can fine-tune that range by selecting using these orange bars. So if I'm interested in a time from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock primarily, I would choose the time using these orange bars. So notice the start and end times in the detail range change as I move these orange bars. So now I've selected time from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock. So I can work with that range in this bar here. And what you notice is there's two colors here. There's green and then there is blue. Green indicates that the recording is available. If the recording was actually not there for a particular period in time, you would see a gap. But this is a good archive with all the recording available. And the blue indicates that metadata for that time frame has already been generated. So for this particular recording, there is metadata available from 7:56 to about 9:07 a.m. Now let's say I want to generate metadata for a new time range which I'm interested in now. So I can select that time range by moving around these orange bars. So we have the time range from 9:07 to about 9:15 selected, and I click on next. So it's telling me there is no metadata for selected duration. We already know that by looking at the blue bar. So we click OK. So it starts generating the metadata. You will see a message coming back saying that the metadata job is submitted, and we can track progress a couple of ways. You will see a gray bar showing up here which will slowly turn blue as the metadata is processed, or you can go back to your SASD, and from there you would be able to see the progress as well. So if I go to my SASD screen, select metadata job management like so, you can see the details that this is the camera. I've submitted a job. It's about 14% through, and this number will keep updating as the metadata is being generated. Keep in mind this is a very resource intensive process, so we limit the metadata server to be able to process only 5 processes at a time. So you can only submit about up to 5 processes at a time. So while that metadata is being generated for that time range, we can go back and look at what is happening with the metadata which is already generated and how we can use it. So you notice that the gray bar is almost turned to blue, so the progress is going well. And if we quickly go back to the screen here, that progress is done. It just about finished to 100%. So we generated metadata for that particular time. Now we want to analyze and use this metadata. So the way to do that is select a range where metadata is already available. So let's select time from 8:20 to 8:30 approximately, to see how many cars came into the parking lot during that time. So I would just select that time, click on next, and there's a few parameters here I can choose. So the time we've already selected, I can choose the sensitivity to be high. So if I select the sensitivity as high, the even small luminance value changes can trigger a motion event. So I don't need a high sensitivity for this particular task here, so I'm just keeping the sensitivity as low. The threshold is a new parameter. So now I'm able to select individual blocks like this on which I want to perform motion detection. So the threshold indicates that if it is a it's a range from 1 to 100. If it is 1, it indicates that even if motion is detected in one of these squares, we generate a motion event. If not, if I set it at 100, then all of these squares need to have motion in them for an alert to be generated. So there's a lot of flexibility over there. There's a few other parameters here, so I can invert my selections. By doing that, I can do a paint all, erase all, so a few nice GUI features over there. So now I want to use the generated metadata to run motion analysis. So I've selected my area. Maybe I select some more parts of the road over there to see if any cars came in. Even in that road, and click next. So if there's no motion, it will just show that there's no motion in the time range. You will see that there's a bunch of time ranges it has divided the data into. There's nothing moving there, so I'm really not interested in those time zones except for this particular one where there's some sort of movement. So I just select that clip, and which around 8:21. You'll see that there is motion over there and a car is passing through. So that is how we view motion on a selected time range. I can go back to the range, see if there's any other motion events which happened around the time. No. So if I had selected a bigger range, I would have possibly seen multiple events, and that's how you get to your points of interest. So that is how the motion detection functionality works through the metadata server. And hope this was helpful, and thanks for staying through. Goodbye and good luck. Hello, welcome to this session on the Metadata Server, or VMGS as it is alternatively called. VMGS stands for Video Metadata Generation Server and is part of the suite of services provided by Cisco's Video Surveillance Manager software. This session assumes that you have already worked with the basic suite of VSM services, which are VSMS, VSOM, and SASD. The Metadata Server is a new server introduced with the VSM 7.5 release. The purpose of this server is to provide metadata services, as is obvious from the name. This service runs on a dedicated standalone server. By dedicated, what we mean to say is that it cannot be co-resident with a VSMS or a VSOM server. It has to be a server by itself. The first metadata service available through this server is the ability to look for luminance changes, or in other words, to perform after the fact motion detection. So how does it do it? The metadata server analyzes previously recorded video archives and produces metadata, which is then viewable through the SASD client. Think of it as an advanced version of the existing forensic search feature. In forensic search, we were able to drill down to the relevant recorded video by using time as the parameter for search. Now, using this metadata search feature, we drilled down to the relevant recorded video using motion as the parameter. So the real value addition here is, even if you did not have motion detection set up on the camera, you can do motion detection analysis after the fact, as long as you have the recording available.